the simple life of trust, and now it all becomes something that's awkward. And so they cover them, a sign of starting to develop masks and veneers and ways to look after their own private sense of what's going on. So they are deteriorating down fast, and then lo and behold, what they hear is God walking in the evening breeze, wondering what's going on, sensing something may not be good, calling out, "Adam, where are you? Where are you?" And then finding Adam finally picking his head up out of the bushes. Now imagine these two mostly naked people, with fig leaves on now, hiding in the bushes. And we want to say that's what became of the great founders of the human race. People given complete dignity to live and rule and be who they're meant to be. Here they are, hiding around, wondering what each other's thinking, wondering if they're going to get in trouble with the big boss. That's what it comes to very quickly. And then God finds them there, God quizzes them there, and then they quickly each blame each other. I love especially what Adam says in self-defense. God says, "Have you eaten from the tree of which I commanded you not to eat?" Yikes. The man said, "The woman whom you gave to be with me, she gave me the fruit." From the tree, and then I ate. In other words, it was her fault, and it was your fault, God, for what I did. How's that for a little maneuver? I know none of you have ever tried anything like that. And then you said, the serpent tricked me, and I ate. Not an impressive showing of owning up by our great-great-grandparents up there. And then there's a long parade of what the consequences are. They're fascinating, but I won't go through them. These are what are called etiological sayings. They are sayings that are explaining today how something came to be. So you wonder why there's so much pain in labor. It's because of Adam and Eve falling. You wonder why serpents crawl on their belly on the ground. It's because of the terrible things they did then. You wonder why women are subjugated in all societies. It's because of what happened. So that's what's going on. But a lot of rich things are happening. But I want to point now to the very end. Adam and Eve are cast out of the Garden of Eden. They have to go and make their own new life now as mortal beings. Labor will now become drudgery, pain, difficult to do. They will wander and try to make a new life for themselves, now carrying the shame, carrying the distrust, carrying the sense that their lives have fallen apart. The very next chapter, chapter 4, they will have the sons Cain and Abel. Cain will murder Abel, so things start collapsing very quickly, and tragedy makes its way into our world. All we're saying, going back to this moment of rebellion, of assertion of our claim and control on things. That's the narrative we're getting. But the last part I want to mention is that amidst all of the tragedy, I'll talk about this in the sermon too, one striking piece is God who is outraged, and God who levies all these punishments, and God who kicks them out because they have actually chosen to go out by accepting the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil. God actually won't turn loose of them. And so the very God who immediately thinking they've been up to something goes and saying, "Adam, where are you? Eve, where are you?" Trying to find them, trying to care about them, worried that they're getting into mischief. That very same God at the end chooses, and this is a small line, but theologians have made a lot of it, chooses to, God himself in the story, make the garments that Adam and Eve will wear when they leave. Now, how is that for a sweet God? After the whole wild mess, after trying to find these humans who made a mess, God's kicking them out because God must, because now God is afraid that, you catch that they'll eat some more and actually try to take over being God themselves. So they've got to go, but God can't help but hold on to caring about them. And this is in a way the pledge, that where they go, God will go. The messes they make, God will go into those messes. However mad God gets, God will never, ever hurt them. There will be places we hit in the Old Testament when God says, kill them all. In fact, that's coming in about 4 chapters in Genesis. Bring the flood, get rid of them, I don't want to see them again. But there'll be other times when God says, I'm sick and tired of these people, just get rid of them. And then he never does. He's a big talker. He gets emotional, gets upset. But at the end of the day, he's hooked. He can't let go of us. And that's part of what the whole Hebrew. There's a great, great passage in the prophet Hosea where Israel's unfaithfulness to God is likened to the unfaithfulness of Hosea's wife. And so he talks about both together, and then it's as if he's saying both to his wife and also to Israel, how can I give you up? I love you so much. I know what you have done, and I've seen you do it again and again, and I cannot turn loose of you. Come home, come home. So that's we'll come to the beautiful, beautiful chapters in Hosea. But that's what we're seeing those inklings here, right in the thick of this very messy situation. Let me then, having sailed pretty fast through that story, talk about 2 or 3 interesting angles that I think are important. One is a very widespread discussion about was it bad, just in terms of being inside the story, was it bad that Adam and Eve fell? Yes, they had a good deal. Great piece of property, everything they could want, not too hard to do, and a nice owner. It all looked like it was going to go really well, and they lost it, for sure. But these were people who never had to make a hard moral choice. They simply were called to trust and obey the one who loved them. So there's a whole string of thinking that full humanity requires the complexity of moral choosing. That we only can finally grow. There's something childlike, in other words, about Adam and Eve in the garden. And that something that is essential to our full humanity is the very struggle in moral decision-making that goes with becoming a person in a complex and difficult world. And so there's a whole strand of thinking that says human beings had to fall. And so they began to talk about the good fall, the happy fall. Felix culpa was the fancy, F-E, like Felix, Felix culpa. The fortunate fall, that bad as it was, tragic as it was, as much destruction as came because of it, it nevertheless was a necessary part of the emergence of our humanity. And if, as I believe to be true, so much of the purpose of creation from God's perspective was sharing the goodness of aliveness with other conscious creatures, able to live and love and choose and spread the goodness of community, the goodness of love of parent and child, and one person to another, and communities for one another. If God's desire was to spread that goodness beyond simply God's own inner life, invite others into that communion, then part of that communion is the struggle, and therefore the tragedy, and therefore the wars, as well as the moments of beauty and truth and goodness that we are made for. So one piece of that strong argument is it needed to happen, as tragic as it is and as serious as the consequences have been. Also, there's another piece I won't dwell on now, but many theologians say, in fact, John Milton does this in Paradise Lost, that if there had been no fall, there would have been no Jesus. Christ would not have come, because Christ wouldn't have needed to come. So there's a whole strand. In fact, it's sometimes you'll see it in some of the Christmas anthems and things. How joyful we are that Adam and Eve fell, because it made possible for Jesus to come into the world. Again, we're deep inside the myth now, trying to think through what the meaning of that myth is, but it's in essence saying our human condition as it is the kind of place where God will work with us in all our complexity. And at the end of the day, take all the trade-offs, perfect paradise forever with people who never wrestle but just are faithful and good people. Take a world like that, and what God has taken the risk on is a world like ours, where we struggle and we argue and we fight and we kill and we love and forgive and nurture. And it's that complex world that God is trying to pull us into relationships of grace and goodness with each other. And that's part of the big gamble in creation that God has made. So it's an interesting conversation. Let me jump on to the particular sort of hunch I have about all of this, and then see if we have a minute for any questions. So I couldn't figure out how to get this into the sermon yet. I'm still working on it. How do I make the translation to this beautiful, powerful, I think, enduring myth of our original blessing, and we can say our original falling. That it's a myth that says we were made good, but there was a tragic flaw that we needed to grab. And how can that relate to the ongoing flow of our of the world as we know it? And, here's my hunch. I think what the story is getting at is that the tragedy of our world and the tragedies we get ourselves into are all tied up in our fear. I think the flaw, I think the serpent, actually the serpent in the story, is the vulnerability, anxiety, and fear that comes with being human beings. And then we live in a world where we're treated roughly at times. There's scary things happen. We aren't sure of how things are going to work out. And so all the time there's that serpent figure saying, remember, you're vulnerable. So what are you going to do? Are you just going to keep trusting? Or are you going to take some action? Are you going to make some moves with your life, career, relationship, business, that can secure things? Are you going to live this kind of silly, centered, graceful life God wants you to live? Or are you going to get to work and make sure you got what it needs to get at what you want out of life? Sometimes it's said that forcefully in the back of your head, and sometimes it's sort of gently, okay, what are you doing to secure your place in the scary world? So my hunch is that, this is my guess for the day, is that what is behind the serpent sowing the seed of uncertainty is it some way of getting at our human vulnerability. By the way, one thing that the theologians talk a lot about is no one knows where the serpent came from. It's just already there. It's somehow, it's part of the deal. And so when we fall, you could say it's not all my fault. The serpent was part of it. And that's what the serpent was. Possibly, if they hadn't had this oily serpent at hand, it might not have happened. So there's something that seems to be in the deal that makes it rough for us to do the right thing. And so I want to suggest for today that the deal is our human finitude in a complex and often scary world. And a world where we get our own mixed messages growing up. We're told straight different things and experience different things. So it is out of our sense of vulnerability, I think, that we are inclined, tempted to seize hold for ourselves. To document that, I want to read one piece from I think I've read this before. I know I have it in doc class. This piece that describes the human situation and the very vulnerability we have. It's written by a psychologist back in the 1950s, a student of Karen Horney. And it's written in, there's some masculine language in it, so I hope you'll forgive. A sense of security is only possible if one is sure of his place, sure of his ability to cope with whatever may come, and sure of his worth and value. Anyone who believes he must energetically seek his place will never find it. He does know that by his mere presence he already does belong and has a place. If one has to be more than he is in order to be somebody, he will never be anybody. If one does not realize that he is good enough as he is, he will never have any reason to assume that he is good enough, regardless of how much money or power or superiority he may amass. It is obvious that in our society, few people believe they are good enough as they are, and can therefore be sure of their esteemed place. Everyone tries to be more, to be better, to reach higher, and as a consequence, we are all neurotic. In a neurotic society which pays a premium to the overambitious search for prestige and striving for superiority. And there he summarizes. Underneath, we are all frightened people, not sure of ourselves, of our worth, of our place. It is this doubt of oneself, expressed in a feeling of inadequacy and inferiority, which is at the root of much maladjustment and psychopathology. Underneath, we are all frightened people, not sure of ourselves, of our worth, of our place. If I were to name the serpent, that would be it.